And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RS-68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flighting down to ST off. Bring in ST off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? We don't need any more of these.
Good evening and welcome to Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. You're looking at a live view of Space Launch Complex 40 with Falcon 9 perched on the pad ahead of yet another Starlink launch. You know the drill. It's another night, another Starlink. Specifically, we're looking at Group 6-33, so the 33rd launch ahead of, or for Group 6 of Starlink, carrying 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites into orbit. We're going to give you a quick roundup and an overview of what we're going to expect to see tonight for the launch. But first, I'd like to go through my list of co-hosts and everyone who's supporting the stream on the side right here. First off, my co-host for the night, Trevor Sesnick. Trevor, how's it going tonight?
Certainly can't complain. These launches feel like they're happening every other day, and that's because they almost are. So I think we'll talk a little bit about SpaceX's just insane launch cadence later today.
Absolutely. We got some interesting records happening tonight that we will discuss in a little bit. We also have Julia out in the field. We have little patchy comms. Do you hear us right now, Julia?
I do hear you, and good evening, everyone. It is a chilly night out on the Space Coast, as in this Starlink hits a little difference, and Max has a beanie cap on.
Awesome. And you heard it, Max as well is out in the field. Unfortunately, we do not have him on comms tonight, but he will be tracking this launch for us. Also back here in the studio, we have Pato operating, and we have a few other people here giving us some facts and back channel information. So first off, like we do with every launch, Trevor, do you want to kind of give us an overview of what we're expecting to see tonight? What is Falcon 9 carrying if no one's ever heard of Starlink before?
Yeah, so tonight, as usual for these Group 6 missions at this point, SpaceX will be launching 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites into a 285 by 293 kilometer orbit inclined 43 degrees. To get there, the vehicle will perform a number of burns. First, the first stage, which is B1077, will burn for about 2.5 minutes. Before separating from the second stage. The second stage will take 2 burns to get to the low Earth orbit I just mentioned, before deploying the satellites roughly an hour and 10 minutes after launch. The first stage will be attempting to land on SpaceX's drone ship Just Read the Instructions, which was tugged downrange by Crosby Skipper. It's about 628 kilometers downrange, with fairing recovery about 691 kilometers downrange. Then yeah, as usual, it's 23 Starlink satellites. This is SpaceX's internet constellation that provides to everywhere around the world access to low latency internet.
Awesome. Thank you for that overview there, Trevor. And as always, we have some support coming in from people already. We've been streaming for 2 minutes, and we already have some people coming in here to cheer us on. So thank you, first of all, for everyone hopping in here on the stream. Bideford here has gifted 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you, Bideford, a very common name that we see here in stream. Thanks for all your support that you've given so far. Joe Howard has gifted 1 Red Team membership, and Ron Speed 3 has joined our membership themselves with a Pad Rat membership. Now, jumping into some questions we have here, and if anyone here is new to the stream, we really like to take your questions and make this an interactive live stream. So if you have a question, shoot it over to us with @NASA Spaceflight in chat, and we will try our best to read them over during the stream. And before I actually hop into a question, we just got a little graphic, not a live video there on the right side of the screen. Julia, how is it out there right now weather-wise? I mean, that flag is blowing in the wind, and it's December, so probably not that warm, I guess. Do we have you out there, Julia?
You got me out here.
There we go.
Not that warm is a relative term. It is in the low 50s. So us Floridians probably think it's cold if we've lived here long enough. Otherwise, the skies are beautiful. Actually, they're lit up quite well by the launch pads, so you get a little bit of low light on the clouds, which is quite beautiful tonight.
Awesome. Well, glad to hear that it might be pretty, but sad to hear that it is a little chilly out there and pretty windy. And we haven't heard any official information. Big J4 Gaming here is asking why they kept pushing back the launch. Julie, we didn't really hear any official information, but it may be possibly due to the wind there, do you think? Or do you think that's not really as big of a factor right now?
I don't think this is any kind of wind that Falcon 9 can't handle. I think it's just launch readiness. The rocket was rolling out to the pad around 4 o'clock, 4:30 this afternoon, so I think it was just final launch preps.
Gotcha. Sounds about right. Thank you for that little update there, Julia. Now, Trevor, I think we might have someone chime in here when I ask this question, but what kind of nozzle are we flying on the second stage today, and why is it the superior of the two nozzles? Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, so it is the extended nozzle, the normal one that we're used to seeing, not the horrendous stubby one.
Ugh.
There's Max disagreeing. Yeah, so on these Starlink missions, SpaceX needs as much performance as they can out of the vehicle. The payload mass on these is somewhere on the order of 18 tons. We don't have an exact figure because SpaceX hasn't told us, but in FCC filings, we've seen that they list each Starlink V2 mini satellite being roughly 800 kilograms. So 800 times 23 is what, 18,400 kilograms or something like that. It's probably a little bit lower than that because of optimization SpaceX has had or whatnot. Anyway, we don't have an official number. But because of that, that's just barely what Falcon 9 is able to do while still being recovered. So since SpaceX wants to recover the vehicle, they need as much performance as they can have in this mission, which means they need a full-size nozzle.
Awesome. Thank you for that information there, Trevor. And we were we were just discussing the second stage of the launch vehicle there. I'm going to toss this right back to you, Trevor. Michael here is asking, where are the second stages for Falcon 9 manufactured, and does SpaceX have a production line of them? Any information on that, Trevor?
Yeah, so those are produced at their headquarters in Hawthorne, California, so in the LA area. And then once they're finished production there, that's actually where the entire Falcon 9 is made. They ship the MVAC engines and second stages to McGregor, where they undergo 2 sets of testing. First, every MVAC engine gets tested without the nozzle extension on, and then later, also without the nozzle extension, the whole second stage gets tested. And then from there, they ship it to the Cape, where they install the nozzle extension and start integration with the Falcon 9 first stage and transport erector.
Awesome. Thank you once again, Trevor. I'm going to give you a little break from questions here, Trevor, and toss this over to you, Julia. River Dave Kenny here is asking, what is the name of the drone ship tonight? And if you know, Julia, how many landings has that endured so far? Maybe just like a ballpark if you don't know the exact number.
All right. Well, I got you. Tonight, the landing is scheduled to be on Just Read the Instructions. Bob is the support ship, and they are about 629 kilometers downrange right now. This would be the 70th landing on Just Read the Instructions out of 71 attempts, and this would be the 178th consecutive landing if successful tonight.
Awesome. That's a lot of landings for one drone trip, but I mean, given SpaceX's cadence, that makes sense when you think about it.
Can I say that it's not technically one drone ship?
Oh.
SpaceX has had 2 different drone ships named Just Read the Instructions. The first one, I believe, was Marmac 300, but I could be wrong about that. And then that one had a wooden deck and just overall didn't perform very well. So after it got destroyed one day, they scrapped it and moved to Of Course I Still Love You. And then later they purchased Marmac 303, which is the current drone ship that is called Just Read the Instructions. And that is what is out tonight. And the previous one, Marmac 300, was used twice on CRS-5 and CRS-6, both of which had failed landings.
Thank you for the two of you for that information. Moving on to some more questions here. We're getting a little bit closer into the countdown, T-minus 26 minutes. I can't quite see any condensation there yet. There may be a bit on the liquid oxygen tank. I can't see any steam coming off, but we're going to keep an eye out on there. We have a confirmation that SpaceX is into propellant loading right now on the vehicle, so they are going to, at the very least, attempt a launch tonight. Fingers crossed there. Oh, another question here specifically for Falcon 9 stages. Trevor, I'm going to give this one to you. Kanan here is asking, what does the refurbishment process for boosters between flights look like? Do you have any insight on that?
Sadly, not really. We got a little bit of insight into this when SpaceX first started reusing boosters on crewed missions. And a lot of what NASA was talking about was how they conduct thorough reviews of the engines and look and x-ray each component to make sure it's up to flying a crew on board. But aside from that, we're really not sure. We suspect that at this point refurbishment is fairly minor. That it's probably just a lot of making sure that the vehicle is in good shape and replacing parts if necessary. But there probably isn't a lot of planned refurbishment at this point. But again, we're not 100% sure, sadly.
Gotcha. And I mean the decreasing time between reflights now, which is it's slowly getting quicker and quicker between flights on some boosters. Does that really indicate to you that work is getting a little bit easier, or like less replacements, less inspections are necessary? Do you think that's a kind of a good indication on progress for refurbishment?
Yeah, definitely. So if you compare some of the early Block 5 boosters, so let's say like B1046 through B1053, most of the average turnarounds were on the order of 150 days. Some are even higher, but that wasn't necessarily because refurbishment took so long. If you compare that to the newer boosters, which are averaging closer to 50 days, so for example, like out of all of SpaceX's boosters right now, B1076 has the quickest average turnaround at 43.88 days, which is a lot lower than, say, B1048, which is 153 or 150.51. So that definitely signifies that these newer boosters have some changes that we may not know about that allows SpaceX to refurbish them a little bit quicker. And it also helps that SpaceX just has so much data at this point. They know exactly how quickly things wear, what they need to look for in terms of wear, and what parts they may need to order. And then, of course, with the higher launch cadence, it's easier to have quicker turnaround times.
Gotcha. And real quick before I move on from this, I just want to say, yeah, you reminded me of the early Block 3 booster reuse days when they pretty much literally had to take the booster apart, put all the engines, take all the engines off, rip them apart. It wasn't really reuse. It was more take it apart, see if everything's good, replace some things, and put it back together again. It's come a long way since then.
Yeah, if you go back that far, a lot of in the Falcon 9 V1.2 non-Block 5 blocks, those were on the order of 200 days generally to refurbish. And it wasn't until the last Block 4 booster, B1045, which held the record for a while at 71.45 day turnaround, which was a substantial reduction from the previous record of 134 days.
It's crazy. And, in the next few years, especially when Starship comes online, we might look at those numbers and be like, that's forever, even though for a reusable rocket, that's not too bad. Let's see, moving on here, we have some more support coming in, so I'd like to thank some people real quick. Paul Batraw has upgraded to a Capcom member. You now have access to our members' Discord, so thank you, Paul, for upgrading your membership, and we hope you enjoy the extra perks you get along with your Capcom membership. Ron Speed 3 here with a $2 super chat asking, what exactly does the 6-33 stand for or mean? Julia, do you want to take that one? What does 633 mean in the Starlink name?
It refers to the launch shell that it's going into. So I don't have the exact coordinates on me right now, but 633, we're launching the Group 6 series here right now. This is 33 out of, I'm not sure how many, to be honest. It never seems to end.
I don't think SpaceX even knows that number, to be
Oh,
clear.
Alex is popping in here. He's letting me know it's a 43-degree inclination. It's the 32nd launch
Yeah, so
of Group
SpaceX
6.
hasn't yet
Remember,
launched.
we don't always go in numerical order. So,
Yeah, SpaceX has not
surprise.
yet launched Starlink Group 6-32. We don't know why they haven't launched that, but that's the one they've missed so far.
Great.
And then I guess it could be worth noting that right, the two shells that SpaceX are launching into right now are Starlink Group 6 and Starlink Group 7. Group 7 is a 53-degree inclination at, I believe, also 530 kilometers, if memory serves me correct. And then this one is 43 degrees at 530 kilometers. And then Group 8 should also be launching shortly. And we're not entirely sure, at least I'm not, what orbit that those are going into.
It's crazy. And actually, right on cue, Trevor, I was about to send this question over to you. What is happening on the transporter erector there? What is that large vent for at T-minus 20 minutes?
Yeah, so that is the T-minus 20-minute and 20-second vent. So the way that Falcon 9 is fueled is when propellant loading starts, they start loading both propellants onto the first stage, so liquid oxygen and the RP1 onto the first stage. However, on the second stage, they only start loading RP1, and RP1 load wraps up at about T-minus 20 minutes, a little bit before that. And liquid oxygen load doesn't start until about T-minus 16 minutes. So what we're seeing right now is they are purging the lines ahead of ahead of liquid oxygen load as to make sure they're cool and make sure that there's nothing, no FOD in them ahead of propellant load.
Gotcha. Thank you, Trevor. And this continues on for a few minutes, really around to like T-minus 16 minutes or so, is it?
Yeah, that is correct.
Awesome. And I'm going to continue through some of our support real quick, then we'll hop back into your questions. Again, we're getting further into the count, just under T-minus 19 minutes. You can see that wind really affecting the T-minus 20-minute vent there, but it seems that given Falcon 9 is well into propellant loading, SpaceX is at least giving it a shot tonight. Mark Lamb here has gifted 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you, Mark, for supporting us and gifting back to the community. Claire Saunders has also gifted 5 Red Team memberships. Getting a lot of generous people here gifting memberships, so thank you to the two of you. And then Claire also with a 2-pound squiggly L's, as Chris, or I don't know who, I think it's Jack likes to say that, saying they're in Florida for their first launch. Will, that's awesome. We're really glad that you're down there, and we hope that you hope they get to see a launch tonight. And maybe if you're in town for a few more days, you get to see Falcon Heavy. And Trevor, speaking of that Falcon Heavy launch, we know that it did its static fire a few days ago. It's rolled back into the hangar now. Yovek here is asking any updates on the Falcon Heavy launch. They said that they're flying in to see it. Have we heard any delays or anything, or does it seem to be on track right now, Trevor?
Yeah, we haven't heard of any delays, but we're also somewhat confused because we also haven't seen any confirmation of a successful static fire from SpaceX. And what we normally get after static fires is SpaceX will tweet something along the lines of static fire complete ahead of USS F-52, then targeting this date for this launch. And we didn't get that this time. So that could just be that SpaceX has kind of been reducing some of their communications since they're launching so much, or it could mean they have a little bit more work to do to the vehicle. But as of right now, it seems like everything is on track for December 11th or December 10th.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. I mean, this year, we've said it like a few times, this has been the year of Falcon Heavy, and I am equally excited for every launch because that dual booster landing is insane. And of course, we will be covering that here on the channel. So be sure to tune in on that December 10th for it's the 5th launch this year, Trevor, of Falcon Heavy.
Yeah, number
Insane.
5.
That's crazy. All right, and then we're going to discuss, there's some other interesting numbers to discuss today besides 6-33. So Trevor, Flixia here is asking, is this the 93rd launch so far this year? What's the number we're looking at right now?
Yeah, so this will be SpaceX's 92nd launch of the year. Um, then I guess this kind of leads to the question of, are they on track to hit 100? And SpaceX's VP of launch the other day posted on X that they are 100 launches this year is possible, but will take a lot of hard work from the team and a little bit of luck with weather. So it seems like they're probably going to end up with like 98 or 99, but there's a chance they could hit 100.
Awesome. And that would be super exciting to see because, I mean, that's just a completely unheard of number for one company. I mean, SpaceX is launching the equivalent of entire nations, more than entire nations worth of payloads right now. And it's unbelievable what they've been able to do with Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy.
You want to know something else that's kind of cool about numbers tonight?
I was just going to ask you that, Julia. What cool numbers do we have related to a historical program?
Well, this is the 52nd launch of Falcon 9 from Launch Complex 40. Launch Complex 40's history is as a part of the ITL, which is the Integrated Transfer Launch Complex, which consists of launch complexes 40 and 41. Now, during the Titan program, 52 launches occurred at Launch Complex 40, which I think is quite fascinating. If you combine all the launches at 40 and 41 for the entire Titan program, they had 78 launches. And we are currently at how many launches total for SpaceX Falcon 9?
Out of 40, this will be 159.
Right. So we've already exceeded the entire Titan program, and as of tonight, they're already long past how many Titans have launched at that pad. So I think that's pretty darn cool.
That is incredible. And yet that's something you don't really think about that much. This pad was not built for Falcon 9. This pad was built for the Titan rockets way back in the 60s, was it, Julia?
Yeah, so that was 1965 was the first launch, and the program basically ended in 2005. So all of this happened over a span of 40 years. And the ITL was designed to make the launch cadence faster. So back then, that was a fast cadence compared to what we're seeing now with a launch every, oh my goodness, just about every 3 days now.
Incredible. So yeah, it's a high launch rate, and then SpaceX has refurbished the pad for Falcon 9, and they've really just hit the ground running with making this pad more efficient than I'm sure anyone ever thought it would be when it was being constructed.
But those ground systems are still holding on. Look at that flame trench there.
Exactly, and do they still use the original rails from the Titan transporter for the transporter erector, or is that not in use anymore?
Just like at 39A, where SpaceX opted to not use the crawlerway and actually put their horizontal integration building there, they do not use the rails at Launch Complex 40, but ULA still does use the rails that were there for the Titan program over at Launch Complex 41.
That's awesome. And I mean, as someone who loves trains as much, not as much, almost as much as he loves rockets, that really appeals to me. Anyone else in chat like trains? We get a train check here in chat real quick.
I like trains, but I'm not in chat.
Okay. Well, I'll take your opinion here and I'll add it into chat, Julia. Thank you. Let's see. Actually, we're just speaking about the transporter erector. So, Trevor, I'm going to send you this question here from 98 Central here, saying, asking, is there a difference between the rocket transporter for Falcon Heavy and Falcon 9 launches, or are they the same transporter? So, kind of a big question there. But Trevor, what's the difference between the two different types of transporters there?
Yeah, so the transporter erector is the same, it just has some modifications done to it. Also, it has some modifications done to a head of Dragon launches. So that they're fairly minor changes in the grand scheme of things. It's just adding all of the infrastructure to fuel the 2 additional cores and start propellant load a little bit earlier. And then there are also some changes done to the ground side of 39A around a Falcon Heavy flight. Then additionally, on Dragon launches, the top of the TE is changed. You can see there are a few more umbilicals that are added for communications and air conditioning and whatnot on the Dragon spacecraft. The two transport erectors that are different are the ones at the Cape from the ones at Vandenberg. Vandenberg has the older style TE where it retracts probably by about 20 to 30 degrees, somewhere in there. I don't remember the exact number. And then stays in that position for launch. When the ones at the Cape retract just a little bit ahead of launch, and then once the vehicle lifts off, they rapidly throw back to over 45 degrees. To get this TE more out of the way of the vehicle's exhaust.
Gotcha. Thank you for that answer there, Trevor. Julia, I got another question for you, and then we're going to kind of go into a bit of a launch countdown overview after that. But Steve here is asking, have they added the crew access arm to the launch tower at Pad 40 yet? It's hard to tell from this angle. Have they put it up yet, Julia? Oh, I think we lost Julia there on comm, so I'm going to pass that to you instead, Trevor. Have they put up the crew access arm yet?
Yes, they have. You can kind of see it in this view, the lit up bit around the fairing, but yeah, it's hard to see, but it's up there.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And it did just pop up on your screen there really quickly, our launch countdown overview. But coming up in about T-minus 10 minutes here, we're just going to do a quick overview about what we plan to see in the last few minutes here throughout the countdown. So right now we are deep into propellant loading on both stages, on all 4 tanks on the vehicle. Coming up in about 3 minutes will be the next major step in the countdown. That will be when Falcon 9 begins its engine chill prior to launch. They'll begin flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the outer casing of the engine to begin cooling it down. The reason that they do that is because you don't want to thermally shock your engine right at ignition by suddenly pumping super cryogenic or super chilled cryogenic liquid oxygen into the engine. That could possibly shatter it, just like, if you take a really, really hot plate and then pour water on it, it could shatter. Same kind of concept there. Then coming up around T-minus 1 minute, we're going to get the final checks on the vehicle pressurized, and the computers are going to take over the countdown. We'll go over that a little bit closer as we get closer to T0. Just want to do a quick overview about what you can expect to see in the last few minutes of the countdown here. All right. Sheriff Tracy here has gifted 1 Red Team membership. Thank you very much to you, Tracy. We've seen a lot of gifted Red Team memberships, and I just want to thank everyone who's not only a part of our membership program, but who's gone even further and has given back to their community with additional memberships being gifted. So thank you to everyone for all the support we've seen so far tonight. Let's see, another question for you here, Trevor. XVI is asking, do you think we're ever going to see dual ASDS landings or barge landings for Falcon Heavy? They thought that there was originally one planned for USSF 44, but they did not do it in the end. Do you think we're ever going to see that logistically, Trevor?
Yeah, so we have seen a lot of recovery plans shuffle when it comes to Falcon Heavy. USSF 44, if I remember correctly, is one of those examples where originally it was going to be recovering both boosters downrange on drone ships, and then they ended up making it RTLS. We also saw another weird mix-up with what was the third Falcon Heavy launch? Not Arabsat. STP-2. Yep. Where on STP-2 originally all the 2 side boosters were going to land on landing pads as they did, but the center core was going to land something like only 30 kilometers downrange on a drone ship. It was going to do a long boost back burn, and that ended up being something like over 1,000 kilometers downrange, and some very it ended up being a very hard reentry that it didn't make it through. So we were never sure what exactly caused that change, but presumably it was just SpaceX guessing at first that they would be able to do this mission profile. Then once they learned more about how Block 5 performs, they were able to determine that there was no way they could make the original landing profile happen. So I think on USSF 44 it's kind of the opposite of that, where because of all of the improvements they've made to Falcon 9 and increasing its payload capacity, they were able to get enough performance out of those boosters to be able to do the dual RTLS. And that was largely advantageous for SpaceX because they didn't have to have both of their drone ships to support one mission. So it allowed them to continue launching Starlink missions from Slick 40 while that mission happened. That said, I would be shocked if we never see a Falcon Heavy where both drone ships have to land downrange. And I guess one thing that could kind of help with that is we've already seen FCC permits for return to launch site Starlink missions. So that could allow SpaceX to continue launching a bunch of Starlink satellites while supporting one of these Falcon Heavy missions where they have to recover both cores on drone ships.
Gotcha. Thank you for that oversight or overview there, Trevor. John Buys here, just quickly reminding, and I'd like to reiterate what they're saying, is remember to hit like. That's a excellent way. I know it's so oversaid today on YouTube and it bothers me, but I'm going to say it anyway. Hit like on the live stream. It really does help. It's a great way to support us for free and help what we do and help the YouTube algorithm gods, whatever Chris B likes to say or Jack likes to say. It really helps them like us a bit more, and helps us, every little bit of support we get, and really helps us get camera views like what you're seeing here. Fleet Cam, we have some cameras at KSC, and so many cameras, of course. So thank you, John, for that reminder there to the community. Just Your Average Rocket Nerd is asking here, on Starlink 6-30, when they landed, the flame went green for a bit. Is that bad? Trevor, is that out of the ordinary or not too concerning, really?
Yeah, that's actually expected. So when the Merlin engine ignites, it uses this pyrophoric compound called TTEB, triethyl-aluminum triethylborane, I want to say. Sorry, triethyl-aluminium triethylborane.
Oh, you had it right and then you made it wrong. Continue.
This compound immediately ignites when it contacts oxygen. So as soon as they start flowing liquid oxygen through the chamber, it ignites the engine. And it burns this bright flash of green. Why did I have problem saying that? So you'll see at liftoff, if you look at the base of the vehicle, depending on what view we have, you'll see this flash of green. And the same thing happens for the startup of the second stage and also the Merlin engines during re-entry and landing. So that is completely expected behavior.
Thank you there, Trevor. Oh, Wheatfield Rails here with a $5 super chat saying, did somebody say trains? And I think we kind of brought the rail fans here out of the woodwork. Love to see it. I mean, I got my own model train here on my desk. Love to see the train support here. So thank you for the super chat there, Wheatfield Rails. Jim Edgar here with a $20 super chat saying, Lisa Bean and Jim Edgar watching the launch from Seattle. Well, we hope that you too enjoy it, and thank you for tuning in tonight. I think it's around 9:03, so it's not middle of the night, but early in the night there in Seattle. And we hope you too enjoy the launch out there. Another question here from 98 Central, quickly asking, why does Florida have lightning towers or lightning rods, but Starbase doesn't? Trevor. Or sorry, Julia, I'm actually going to send that to you, Julia, because you're a Florida native. Why does Florida have all these lightning towers, but we don't really see them elsewhere?
Well, my goodness. We are in basically the lightning belt, and Florida is quite well known for lightning strikes. So lightning protection is definitely a necessity here. Not saying that they don't have lightning in Texas. It's just not quite as frequent. And I'm not sure, but I think that tower at Starbase would take most of the brunt of that anyways, and may have some lightning protection built into it. So, yeah. Lightning is a real thing, and oftentimes while Max is in the field, Max may have to take shelter due to said lightning.
Yeesh. Yeah, I remember hearing that sometimes. And the Starship launch tower at Pad 39A, that doesn't have a lightning rod on it yet, right? There's no kind of proper lightning protection on that yet?
No, I haven't seen any proper lightning protection on that, but the nearby tower has it. So by nature, that should be... that protection system would be hopefully where lightning would go.
Gotcha. I mean, since they're not really using it, I guess the tower itself is kind of a makeshift lightning rod right now. Guess you could maybe say that. Let's see here. Cryo Nickel here. That's kind of a. I'm going to toss this question around to both you, Trevor, and Julia. They're asking, do you think SpaceX will end up launching crew from Pad 40 next year? Trevor, do you think they'll end up launching crew from Pad 40? And if so, let's say, when do you think? Early, middle, end of the year?
Yeah, I think almost certainly. NASA made a comment the other day saying that SpaceX is targeting the next Axiom mission be the first launch from this pad. And there, for the person who asked earlier, you can clearly see the crew access arm in that shot. So yeah, I think probably early next year, we'll see a crewed launch out of Slick 40.
And Julia, before we get to T-minus 1 minute, what are your thoughts on that?
I would also say probably private missions like Axiom first, and then we'll see what NASA thinks about it, but I think it's a great redundancy.
I agree, and it's going to be exciting to see crew flights return to Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Now we're getting below T-minus 1 minute here. Falcon 9 is beginning to configure itself for flight. The flight computers have taken control of the countdown, and the tanks are now pressurizing for flight. You're going to see a small amount of venting continue from the vehicle and from the strongback over the next few seconds, but they will eventually close and the venting will stop. That means the vehicle is pressurizing itself fully to flight pressure and getting ready for launch. You can see some final purging there from the transporter erector as we just passed T-minus 30 seconds. Now we heard the go for launch coming up on T-minus 20 seconds for Falcon 9. You're going to see the main engines, the 9 Merlin 1D main engines here, ignite together at T-minus 3 seconds, followed by liftoff at T+0. We have engine ignition and liftoff of Falcon 9 carrying 23 Starlink V2 satellites into orbit. Now it's going to be a few seconds till we hear that launch audio, so I'm going to sit back and be quiet, but y'all can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the launch audio of Falcon 9. All right, and we're passing T+1 minute and 20 seconds into flight. Falcon 9 is supersonic and has just passed through the moment of maximum mechanical stress on the vehicle, or max Q. Now coming up in just under a minute at T+2 minutes and 26 seconds, we're going to see the 9 first stage Merlin engines cut off, followed shortly after by stage separation. But until then, take a look at these gorgeous plume shots we're getting as the vehicle ascends up into the atmosphere. I love seeing, Trevor, we talk about this every live stream I'm on, but I just got to say, I love seeing the plume expand and get dimmer as it gets higher up in the atmosphere. It's always just something that never really gets old. It's beautiful to see. And look at that shot right there.
Another thing that I absolutely love is on some nights, like right now, you can see the exhaust kind of starting to get blue.
Yes.
And I was actually with one of our members the other day, Multi Space Industries, we were talking about it, because I was kind of confused where this blue color comes from. And it's actually just one of the emission lines of RP1. And there we have shut off.
Awesome. Now we're going to see stage separation there, followed very quickly after by second stage engine ignition. We're going to see some onboard views here provided by SpaceX. And then really quickly, just a few seconds after second stage ignition, there we go, we can see stage separation. And second stage ignition. Now, if you noticed a bit of a kind of glowing yellow in the background there during the stage step shot, that is Florida. Those are the night lights of Florida. You can see them actually on the left-hand side camera view. I believe it's probably Daytona Beach, maybe Jacksonville on the upper left-hand side, that large cluster. But always love to see that and kind of get a reminder of how far and high up we are right now. Now, ooh, we got some excellent shots there of the second stage plume. I believe we got some from Max here. Also see some RCS action, it looks like. Now we're going to see payload fairing separation here as well. We should see two small little dots come off the side there. And I think we see, is that the first stage just to the bottom left there, Trevor, of the, we saw a little glint there. That may have been a fairing half, I'm not too certain.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm updating my spreadsheets so we can get stats to you as soon as booster lands.
Love to hear it. Thank you, as always, Trevor, for your hard work. Now, the second stage is getting higher and higher, and it's basically in the vacuum of space at this point. You can see the extreme expansion of that engine plume right there, and you can see some stars going by, too. Again, the great benefits of having a night launch is you get these spectacular visuals. I think the only time you really get a better visual is during an RTLS mission, maybe specifically a Falcon Heavy RTLS mission. And if you've never seen one of those before, you have to tune back in here on December 10th to check that out. But until then, we're just going to keep watching here as Starlink continues into orbit. Now, coming up in about a minute and a half, we're going to get the first stage entry burn. This is where 3 of those 9 first stage engines reignite to slow the vehicle down a bit, but also create a bit of a makeshift heat shield using that engine exhaust. It's called supersonic retropropulsion, and it really helps the first stage survive re-entry by physically pushing away and holding back that re-entry heating from hitting the base of the first stage. Again, that's coming up in just a little over a minute here on the flight. Now, again, you could see the bright nozzle there of the second stage Merlin vacuum engine. That's going to continue burning for about 3 minutes up until second stage engine cutoff. That'll happen about 8 minutes and 40 seconds. Now, Trevor, this is going to be the 9th landing of this specific booster, correct?
Yes, that is correct. And I was actually, just as I was filling out my spreadsheets, had a fairly cool realization. That this is B-1077's 8th launch of the year, so it's tied with B-1076 for the most launches to ever occur for a single booster in a calendar year.
That's incredible. We mentioned it a bit earlier in the stream, but they're really getting quick with these turnaround times.
Yeah, the turnarounds have been getting a little bit shorter. Definitely on average they have, but they still they seem to not really care about trying to break their turnaround records like they used to. They got it to under a month, I believe 23 days or something around there is the current record. But it seems like they've kind of slightly shifted focus of, instead of having a few boosters that get turned around really rapidly, just having a little bit larger of a fleet that they can take their time refurbishing.
Right, and yeah, that makes sense. I mean, they're growing the Falcon 9 fleet. And speaking of first stages, the first stage here, 1077, is performing its entry burn. This is, like I said, slowing it down, but also using that exhaust as a heat shield. It's going to last for a few more seconds, and we'll see those engines shut down. And keep an eye on that left-hand side camera. This is one of my favorite shots we get during the launch, is we may get a bit of re-entry heating on those grid fins. So keep an eye on that left-hand side camera if we continue to get video. And there we go. You can see a little bit of plasma build up there. That's totally normal. Those grid fins are made of titanium, so they can withstand quite high temperatures.
It's like the new iPhone.
Yeah, but unlike the new iPhone, these things are resilient and they can make it through atmospheric reentry.
Another cool stat, by the way, while we're going on this, if one thing that I like looking at is the 5 launch average turnaround time for a pad. So just kind of looking at like what is the average turnaround time throughout the past 5 launches, and we've seen this reduce quite significantly. So like at the beginning of this year, it was around, at Slick 40, it was around 7 to 8 days, and now it is after today's launch at 4.85 days. So they've been definitely tending the amount of launches from Slick 40 up, which has been quite impressive to see.
That's awesome. And we know that they are trying to get those turnarounds as low as they can to keep getting Starlink going. And I can't wait to see what they end up doing at Vandenberg when they get Slick 6 up online sometime soon. I mean, we've heard nothing about Slick 6, so.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen similar reductions with Slick 4 East there, where at the beginning of this year, the average turnaround time at the pad was on the order of 20 days, if you look at the 5 launch average. And now it's on the order of 11 days. So it's still a lot higher than Slick 40, but definitely lower than it was. And on screen right now, that seems to be a successful landing, marking SpaceX's 252nd booster landing and 178th consecutive landing.
Awesome. And again, those numbers are getting up, and up. We're going to be at 300 before you know it. And keeping an eye on our main primary mission tonight on the right-hand side of the screen. There we go. Second stage engine cutoff 1. Now, the second stage is now going to coast for a little under 50 minutes, close to 45 or so, and then reignite for a few seconds to get the Starlink circularized and into their final orbit. And on the left-hand side of your screen there, you can see pad 40 with the strong back thrown back into 45 degrees and the beautiful new crew access tower. And I love the blue-ish accent lights they have on that. I don't know if that's intentional or just what they had to put on there for LEDs, but that's a really cool effect that makes it stand out. Now that Falcon 9 second stage is in orbit and the first stage has landed back on the drone ship, that's going to bring us to the end of our stream tonight. Actually, before I say that, that was the 199th drone ship landing from Alex, or from information there from Alex. So getting very close to 200 there on the drone ship landing side. So that's very cool. And before we close the stream, we have one last goodie here from Julia out in the field. Once again, out here with a streak shot, this time over, I believe that's probably Port Canaveral. Got some nice Christmas lights here on the ships, giving it some nice color. Excellent shot, as always, from Julia, and we love to see those from her. So thank you, Julia. Actually, I'm going to be in closing us out. So thank you, Julia, for this image and your commentary during the stream.
It was lovely to join y'all, and believe it or not, I am in Titusville, not Port Canaveral tonight. So that's your view from Titusville.
Thank you. I saw boats and I assumed Port Canaveral, but I assumed incorrectly. Also out in the field, we had Max Evans. Thank you, Max. You're not on comms right now, but we appreciate the track as always from the press site. And thank you for enduring the cold, you and Julia. Thank you to the both of you. Thank you also to Trevor for joining me as my co-host tonight with all your plethora of information and updating your spreadsheets live on air. So thank you, Trevor, for that.
Yeah, of course, it's always a nice stream when we don't have to hear Max's horrible take that Stubby is better.
Absolutely. I can go to sleep comfortable tonight. Thank you, Trevor. Also, thank you to Pat O back in the studio for pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and keeping this stream going. Thank you, Pat, as always, for your expertise in controlling the stream. And I have been your host for tonight, Ian Atkinson, a reporter with NSF. It's been a pleasure, as always, to bring this stream to all of you. Hope you enjoyed it. We will see you at the next Falcon launch. Have a great rest of your night or great rest of your day that just started if you're on the East Coast or in Europe. But other than that, have a great night. We'll catch you on the next one. See you later.
And here we go.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RT-58 chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up.
Tango down to nominal.
Flighting down to ST off. Bring in ST off. It's orange!
Oh my God!
Décollage! Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane would be igniting the flare, correct?